and we are working daily to address it. You have our word. We will not leave a single student behind. We are working on alternatives, and in the meantime, we continue to ask for your grace and patience as we sort this issue out. We have many district staff with us today, and they are here to provide support in making sure you have the best answers possible to the questions that you may have. We know that this online format can be quite cumbersome, so what we're going to do is very similar to what we did last time, is ask that each reporter ask all of your questions before moving on to the next reporter to prevent people from talking over to one another. Tim Lamons will be facilitating the order and timing of the news conference, and we ask for your patience and understanding as we want to give all of our media an opportunity to ask questions. I will now turn it over to our superintendent, Dr. Jane Belmore.
Thank you, Gloria. And thank you to all of our other board members who have really fully supported us throughout this crisis. And thank you to all of our partners in the news media who are here. You also play a vital role in providing our families and community with very important information. I want to make my opening remarks brief, but before I begin, I want to take a moment to thank all of our district staff who have been working tirelessly to provide continuity of learning to our students during this time, and many of them have joined us today. MMSD is truly an amazing district, and our city is very fortunate indeed to have such a treasure for our young people and our families. I'm sure you will have many questions, and we have our district leaders and subject matter experts here to help us answer them. Throughout this crisis, we have all been subject to face many unknowns that may surface on a regular basis. The lack of certainty about our own health and that of our loved ones, economic concerns, and a wondering about when this will come to an end. We wonder too, when will school reopen? Will there be summer school? The reality is, at this point, we just don't know the answers. And without answers and without our routines that we've come to expect, it's sometimes hard to feel hopeful. So in this uncertain time, I encourage you to consider some ideas that may help you to regain some sense of certainty. I'd like you to consider reminding yourself of the constants in your life. What are the things that haven't changed? Create new routines that help you and your family move through your day. Explore some healthy ways to take your mind off constant concerns. Exercise, read a book, cook something special, play with your children. Tap into your creativity, draw, dance, make music, and reach out to people who can be supportive. It's so important that we stay connected. This crisis has stretched for over a month, and we don't know how much longer this will last. So let's be sure that we are all taking good care of ourselves so that we can come out on the other end healthy and well. I encourage our community to visit the MMSD webpage, where there is an abundance of information for families on being well during this crisis and staying well long after the crisis is over. With that, I want to thank you for your time, and we will turn it over to Tim, who will open it up for questions.
All right, thanks, Jane. We're going to work through the list here. We're going to start with Chris Cruz with the Simpson Street Free Press.
Oh, hello.
Hi, Chris.
Yeah. Oh, hello. My name is Chris Cruz, and I'm a reporter at Simpson Street Free Press. I'm also a student at West High School. I know that a few of my peers are upset that the district is maybe thinking about switching into the pass or fail system, and maybe you'll get into this later on. Their main concern is that they have been working really hard throughout the year to try to improve their GPA, and maybe the system won't help them do that. So what would you say to those students?
So Chris, I would say we've had to make some really hard decisions about a lot of things that are not the way that we would want our world to be working right now. And so with that, grading is one of those decisions that we had to think a whole lot about. And we know there's no one right answer to this, but we do think that for a lot of reasons, we landed on the best way to help students monitor their progress, and understand what work is about. So I'm going to turn it over, I think, to either Cindy or Lisa, whoever wants to jump in here. If you want to give a little more detail about why we chose the direction that we did.
This is Cindy Green. Sorry, I had to find my mute button, so I apologize. Thanks for the question. I think that we really took a lot of time and a lot of thought to make a decision that we felt was going to serve the majority of our students the best and not harm students. And there's a few reasons why we made this decision. We know that due to unforeseen circumstances, some of our students are not able to even access virtual learning right now. And with that, we did not want them to be penalized or not be afforded the same opportunity as students that are able to access that. We felt that a pass, no pass was the best way to go, that was most equitable for all of our students and didn't disadvantage students that were already disadvantaged. The other thing that we discussed was where letter grades are not the same as the letter grades were first semester. We do understand that for some students, GPA is really important. So we thought it was important to freeze our GPA at first semester, so we didn't impact GPA. But letter grades, when they were face-to-face, had a different meaning than I think what letter grades have during a virtual learning time. Our teachers have been asked kind of flip the way they do teaching and learning right now and going into a virtual environment with little to no professional learning. And we know that there's great variability that's going to happen across all of our high school classrooms and with our teachers and how instruction is going to look. We did not think that the letter grade would mirror the letter grades that happen when we're in a face-to-face. And so we did not think that it was the right approach. So that's just a few of the reasons that we thought that moving to a pass, no pass made the most sense. And the last thing I would say is this is something that, you know, is not unique to Madison. These are decisions that have had to be made not only in our kind of surrounding districts, but across the entire nation as the majority of our K-12 systems have had to shut down.
Lisa, did you want to add anything?
I would just add that, just reiterate from Cindy, it's important to know that students' GPA will again be froze at the first semester, and that cumulative GPA at that time cannot go down. Also to let folks know that we have been hearing from and working with our post-secondary institutions, and they are taking into consideration that this semester is being influenced by COVID-19. We will be putting a demarcation on diplomas, on grading the final grade report card that does reflect that these are times that we are in with COVID, so that post-secondary institutions are aware of that. And there is a clause, if there is a college or university that requires grades for second semester, that would fall into the third party sort of request, and we would be able to provide grades if a post-secondary institution formally requests that.
And I do believe that third party requests could include also scholarships and other things like insurance companies to request that grade if they are still going to be using that criteria, which many of them probably will be changing their criteria as well. So
Correct.
Thank you, Chris, for that question.
Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any other questions, Chris, before we move on?
No, that was it. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Next, it will be Jade. Are you there?
Yep, I'm Jade with WORT Community Radio. I was wondering how input from families and students have been gathered during this time.
Well, we've been communicating with our families and our students on a pretty regular basis. We've asked for their feedback on a number of different things. And I think what most stands out is our effort to get devices out to students and ascertaining whether or not families have access to internet. So I don't know if I see Andrew here. Does anybody else have anything to add to that? Oh, Andrew.
Yeah, there. Yeah, we have fielded a couple of surveys that relate to the availability of devices and the availability of internet to our families. We've changed over, those are former surveys, we've changed over to a ticketing system that families can use to identify technical issues, including access to internet and Wi-Fi. So we're still trying to get the best understanding of exactly who is lacking access.
Thank you, Andrew. I think
Can I ask another question of Andrew then at that? On that, what number of students are still not having devices or having access to log on to their classrooms?
The device question, I'll have to refer over to Chad Weezy, who may have a better idea. When it comes to information that we've gathered so far on Wi-Fi access, we could see about 3,000 students or about 1,800 or 1,900 households that lack Wi-Fi and or internet access for those devices. So further investigation is needed to get a really clear picture, but based on our first couple of surveys, that's what we've discovered.
All right, I can take a run at the question relative to devices. So to give you a quick update there, about a week and a half ago, we ended up using UPS and had over 7,000 devices delivered to families. And that was via the survey that Andrew mentioned, which has actually surveyed families twice to see who needed devices still at their households. And now we have opened up a ticketing system where if a student or a family reaches out to their librarians, their LMTS staff, and says that they either have a broken device or need an additional device, we're actually utilizing our own MMSD security assistance and Badger Bus, our transportation provider, and we're hand delivering devices to families. We did another 150 devices today. So we currently have about 250 open tickets, and those would be those recent requests where families are stepping in and saying, I either have a broken device or need an additional device. And our turnaround time right now is about 2 days for the librarian to take that information in. We ready a device and then get it on a bus for hand delivery. We're hoping that number continues to shrink. At this point, we have enough devices that any family that's reaching out that says there's a need, we're able to respond to it.
There's, thank you, Chad and Andrew. There are a number of different ways that also reaching out to families through mainly our websites, and also a process where our social workers are getting in touch with families via telephone and having conversations with them that way. I don't know, Jay, if you wanted to say anything more about reaching out to families.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Jane. I think in addition to the surveys and some of the more formal reach out, we also have our teachers in communication and reaching out to their students. And obviously without internet access, it's unlikely that those teachers are seeing their students in Zooms, but our teachers are making phone calls, and then our support staff are also making phone calls primarily to check in on the wellness of each student and family, to assess and identify needs and help connect them to resources. So I think quite a bit of the feedback that we're getting from families is through that consistent communication. So beyond the students that we've discussed that we're still connecting to Wi-Fi, our teachers are of course in regular communication with their students every school day now through a variety of platforms, including Seesaw and Google Classroom.
Thank you, Jay.
Is there a way that attendance is being recorded so we can kind of see what % of our students are actually talking to the school?
Jay?
Yeah, thank you, Jade. Attendance is always a great tool for us to just help identify students that aren't getting what they need in terms of support, and we're using it specifically for that purpose during virtual learning. We took attendance twice last week, and moving forward, we'll be taking attendance every Friday. And again, the question that our teachers are answering when they check that a student has attended is primarily that they've been in touch with that student and that that student has engaged with that staff member throughout the week. Last week, we were at 92.7% across all of our grades and all of our schools, which is just slightly above our regular attendance rate at this point. And then beginning this Monday and then every subsequent week, our support staff are then reaching out to any student that we have not been in contact with. Again, as I mentioned earlier, to check in, to assess needs, identify any concerns, their mental health, their well-being, their physical health, food, housing, childcare, internet access, etc.
Thanks, Jay.
I think I just had one more question, which was, I think addressed earlier, but a decision to reopen schools obviously hasn't been made. Is that a decision that the school board makes, or is that a decision that's going to be made by Governor Evers?
Well, the overarching decision of the safe at home is a governor's decision. So right now, that's what we're operating under. So that's the first thing that kind of has to be addressed is whether or not our whole state will still be under that safe at home. Gloria, did you want to add anything?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
I think that's all of my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Morgan Wolf. Morgan?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So a few things. So the question that I had about the number of students that weren't able to have virtual access was already answered, but with the 7,000 devices that have gone out to families, you said there was 150 devices that went out today. So is that just new devices that maybe were broken or needed to be repaired that were sent back out?
It's probably a combination, Chad.
Yeah, good question, Morgan. So we did two surveys. One initially, do you need a device? And the second survey was, tell us one more time, confirm you need a device, and then what's your correct mailing address? And there's a decent chance that we had some families that either had that end up in the spam in their email in basket, or for one reason or another didn't respond to the survey. And then in turn, we've had our local site-based LMTS staff, our librarians, working with social workers and principals to essentially comb through all of their student rosters to make sure we didn't miss anyone. And that's a lot of the cleanup we've been doing over the last week. So we've actually hand delivered over 1,000 devices that came after we did that initial UPS shipment. And we're continuing to uncover kind of localized site-based families and students that still don't have a device or have had one broken. So I think it's a combination of all those things, either a device that isn't working or isn't charging, you name it, a lost charging cable, or it could just be a family that missed the survey and is finally saying, I need a Chromebook. I think we're also seeing some families that maybe initially said, I don't need a device, we've got one in our household already. But now you may have a parent working from home that's using the computer that's at their house, and they're requesting an additional device to make sure students have a device and they can have one to work as well. So I think it's a combination of all those things.
Okay, so just double checking here. You had 3,000 students initially in that survey that said that they didn't have access or they needed an additional device. But then you had 4,000 more devices go out to families for a total of 7,000 devices?
Yeah, that's actually two different data sets. So the 3,000 number is the number we believe we're dealing with in terms of families who need additional help for access to the internet.
Okay.
And the 7,000 number came from a survey, I need a device. Some of those families might need a device and still might need internet, but some of those families also just needed a device and they've got access to broadband or Wi-Fi.
So the 3,000 can fall within the 7,000.
It could, but we don't know for certain. There could be some crossover there. But yeah, it's likely that there's a chance that some of the 3,000 is represented in the 7,000 devices that we sent out.
So what exactly are you doing for the people that lack the internet then? If you can provide the devices, how are you providing internet access?
Yeah, so that's both a local issue for us to continue to try to manage, and also an issue nationally. I think it actually hits harder in some of our urban districts than it does even in some of the smaller districts that are able to come up with localized solutions. So, we're having continued conversations with the city. This is not only a school district issue, but it's an issue that impacts all of our families and community members, not just our students. We're working on plans right now to try to come up with solutions that could be multifaceted. It could mean access to individualized hotspots. There's issues there related to just a shortage, which actually having the device. We're coming up with the possibility of maybe some free internet hubs, that if families have a means to transportation, they can maybe drive and have access to free hotspot hubs. And we're doing what we can to be creative, but there's lots of logistics that go into internet access, many of which are out of the control of the school district, and actually have more to do with public policy related to having private internet, piped into households. At this point, the city and the state, they don't have the ability to actually provide residential internet service. So we're having to kind of work our way through all those complexities.
So there's 3,000 students that have said that they lack the internet access or the sustainability of it. What exactly are they doing? Because from my understanding, I mean, are they just going to paper and pen? How are they getting their lessons? I know their teachers are calling them, but do you feel that that's really efficient to carry on through the rest of the school year? Because that puts them at a huge disadvantage for learning.
Yeah, and maybe Lisa wants to hop in around some of the things we're doing with paper materials as far as instruction goes. Morgan, I think some families may be finding their own creative solutions to finding free internet access. We know it's a giant gap. It's a gap that existed before we had to go into a virtual learning scenario here. And we're trying to come up with as many local solutions as we can. And once again, I think it's on all of us to continue to call out the fact that there's a huge disparity here on in terms of families that don't have access to the internet. We're aware of it and we're working on it.
All right. Okay, thank you. I have one more question for you. This one is directed more so away from the technology aspect, but focusing on your students that have special needs. How exactly are they handling this situation at home? Because I know I have a cousin that has Down syndrome. I know there's a real connect that these students have with their faculty at their schools.
I'm going to ask John to take that question, John Harper.
Yes, Morgan, that's a good question. And I would say that there's not one simple solution for your question. We are collaborating with our general education teachers, number one, to make sure that the content delivered is as standards aligned as possible. And at the same time, our special education staff are working collaboratively to make accommodations and modifications where necessary, and following up with individualized services. We're also providing almost teleservices, teleservices in the form of speech therapy and other kinds of therapies. Our special education teachers are establishing times with students directly and their families to provide individualized services to go deeper in concepts and to ensure learning on particular topics. We're also recognizing that purely online learning is not the answer for everyone, and that we've developed a process with our print shop services where special education teachers can create customized or individualized lessons and learning activities, those print jobs, so to speak, are sent to the print shop where they're printed, they're run, and they're sent directly to the family and the services, and which there's follow-up then with the special education staff, whether that's on the phone, whether that's through video, online video services, and so on. We're working as creatively as possible and individualizing lessons to the maximum extent, given the parameters that we're working under. I'll pause there and then just ask if I've kind of addressed that or if you have a follow-up.
I do have one follow-up, and I think you kind of hit on it a little bit though. So you've learned that virtual learning isn't the correct or right way for some of these special needs students. So you've gotten innovative, and one of the ways is that you've printed out lessons plans for them.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think, just being honest here, that virtual learning is not optimal, is not ideal, and is not preferred in many, many cases. I mean, that is why we have been an organization that has thrived on face-to-face and like very individualized instruction. And there are simply things that are nearly impossible to replicate in a virtual world. So yes, we've pivoted very quickly and are learning very rapidly on how to make the best of the situation. But frankly, there are numbers of students with disabilities or other types of circumstances where purely online is absolutely not the answer. And we're being as creative as possible. We've also created a system where if our special education case managers feel that there are some supplemental instructional materials that need to be ordered, we've devised a process where the case manager can send the order to our office that is filled, and we will be shipping it directly to the family's home. We've also, in very unique cases, gone back to the school, retrieved specialized equipment that is absolutely necessary to continue learning, and we have gotten those materials to the families. And again, we've been very, very committed to looking at every possible way of meaningfully engaging students and continue to provide special education and related services in this challenging virtual environment.
So real quick, what's the percentage of special education students in MMSD? Do you have that at all, a rough estimate?
Yeah, so it's about 14% of our student population are identified with special education needs.
All right. Okay, that's all my questions. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome.
Thank you. Next up is Scott Gerard with the Capital Times.
Thank you, and thanks again for organizing this, everyone. My first question is about the grading changes. And I guess I was just hoping to get some more insight on the thought process that went into balancing the need to be understanding and fair during such an unprecedented time with assessing students' work and readiness to move on to the next grade or graduate. Just kind of what went into that thought process from staff.
Lisa, if you could share.
I'll start, and then Cindy, you can help me with this as well. I think actually much of what we've just been discussing was really formed the basis of the grading decisions that we made moving forward. As we've all identified, there are students that don't have access to Wi-Fi. There are students who are in homes and situations where the amount of time they can spend on learning is very different depending on a family's routine. And what we wanted to do first and foremost was not harm students in this process with grading when this was completely out of their control. So we took a lot of factors into consideration that we just talked about, and we will be sending out some paper pencil resources for students over the next couple of months. We hope to be doing 1 or 2 mailings around that to support students who don't have access. And at the same time, we are, as Chad said, looking into any creative way that we can find to get students access to devices. So primarily, The reason that we made the decisions that we did around grading was really about making equitable decisions, knowing that the choice to go completely virtual was not ours. This is not the preferred method of learning for many kids, not just students who have special education needs, but other students as well. And we wanted to really hold students harmless in this as we developed our grading guidelines. Cindy?
Sure, so I'll just add a few things to that. What Lisa didn't mention is at the high school level, we wanted to make sure students were still earning credits and did not fall off track. And so I think that's an important thing that we paid attention to. We, as I mentioned before, around the decision to go a pass, no pass versus letter grades, we wanted to make sure students that couldn't engage during this time for whatever reason were not going to be disadvantaged. We were thinking most about our students that could be disadvantaged and making a decision that was going to benefit them. And at the same time, ensuring that kids could still earn credit. I've mentioned this before, but we were 3/4 of the way through the school year. So we felt pretty confident in ensuring that students could not go down from the March 13th date and the grades they had at March 13th. So that if students were able to demonstrate knowledge and skills at that point in time, they were on track to earning credit, and they could only improve if they were able to engage with us for the remainder of the year. I will say again, it was a difficult decision for us to really think through, and we spent a lot of time talking to our schools about this, and also having a conversation with some of our parent advisors to get to a place and recognize there is no perfect answer or decision here, and we had to make one that we felt was going to be most beneficial for our students, and especially for those that were not able to engage during this time.
Thank you. The only other question I have, so with kind of the up in the air dates with the Safer at Home order, Jane, you mentioned those. So without a final decision on the rest of the year, how is the district balancing implementing this virtual learning and other systems that are required right now with being prepared to potentially reopen if that order does expire and that decision is made?
So thank you for that question, Scott. We've been thinking a lot about that. Of course, our initial response was really totally focused on getting our continuity of learning plan up and going and all the details you've just heard about today. But we are beginning to make that shift of if then, what happens if this is an opening date, if another date is an opening date, and even thinking about summer school and the fall. So those conversations are beginning to form for us. And again, a lot of what the decisions we'll have to make will be based on the information that we get from external guidelines. Gloria, did you have anything?
No, I think you're spot on, Jane. I think it is starting to think about what is our reentry plan, and those conversations have started. I know amongst our administration and staff and among board members, and we will be talking about what that looks like in the future. So we will be ready for when that happens.
Thank you.
All right, that's all my questions for the day.
All right, we'll move over to Logan with the Wisconsin State Journal.
Hi, thanks again for holding a virtual press conference. This question's probably for Kelly, but does the district have a dollar estimate at this point on what sort of financial hit the pandemic will cause for the district's current budget and next year budget?
Kelly, I'll let you go with that.
Hi, we don't have a current estimate, and largely because there are still a lot of unknowns. We are waiting for the governor to sign the current legislation that the Senate was reviewing today. We're also waiting for a lot of information regarding what the state's budget repair bill might look like for next year. But we're hopeful that we'll get some funding out of the current CARES Act that'll be coming to the district shortly. And that will help to cover some of the expenses that you just talked about, or you heard about today, which, as you can imagine, are largely unbudgeted. We will have some savings. Obviously, our buildings are closed, so utility bills and some of those kind of things will generate savings for us. I anticipate that we might need to dip into our fund balance, but that's the reason why fund balance exists. It exists for crises and occasions like this. So if we need to dip into that for this year, we absolutely will. I imagine we'll end the year still well within the board's policies regarding fund balance. And as it relates to next year, we are watching closely that state budget repair bill. The board will likely have to discuss the outcomes that come out of that affect us. And we hope that the state doesn't attempt to balance its budget on the back of kids. We need to be watching for that and advocating for our students and our public school systems when we can.
Thank you, Kelly.
And to follow up on that quickly, what is the fund balance at right now?
50.
You know, I don't have it right in front of me. It's about $50 million.
Okay. And I got a question about hourly employees. What's happening now with hourly employees who might not have work to do during the school closure? Are they being paid?
Deirdre, you want to cover that one?
Yeah, Logan, yes, hourly employees are being paid, and many of our hourly employees are focused on supporting the virtual learning that is occurring right now. So all of them have some tasks that they're doing related to that. And then there are other folks that are engaging in professional development at this point. And we continue to think about other opportunities for those folks that are hourly that may not have a full scope of responsibilities at this point. There's certainly opportunities for us to dig in and have them engage in professional development that they may not have had the ability to do during the school year. So we're looking at that as well.
Thank you.
And on the district's free meals it's been providing to students, is it a concern at all that the number of meals being picked up each day is significantly less than the number of students who are on free and reduced lunch and the overall student population? And if it is a concern, you know, what is the district planning to do to address that?
I'll ask Chad to speak to that. Chad?
Hey, Logan. Yeah, we are aware of the fact that, we certainly have a higher percentage of students on free and reduced lunch than we're getting to every day. To start with, we're proud of the fact that the number of meals we've been dealing with every day has continued to grow. We're at now about 3,600 meals a day. That's up from just over 1,000 when we started this program. I think we're hesitate to speculate on why other families aren't taking advantage of these services. Madison's a town that is fairly rich in resources in terms of other places families can go if they have a need for kind of supplemental nutrition. Lots of food banks, lots of churches, lots of folks that are reaching out and really ramping up their level of service just like we have. You could also guess that there are families that just don't want to leave their homes, that maybe they're going out once a week for food at a variety of places and then adhering to the safer at home order and are just deciding not to leave. We did end up expanding another site. We had a spot on the north side, Sandburg Elementary, where we thought we could get to a few more families, and that's been successful. And we actually did see a little uptick after there was some media earlier in the week around the availability of meals on a daily basis. So we'll continue to do our very best to make sure we're getting to all of our families. We've communicated it a number of times. To Jay's point earlier, we've got social workers and teachers reaching out to students and families that we haven't heard from and continuing those one-on-one conversations to make sure they have everything they need, including meals. So we're proud of the work we've done so far, but we know that we will probably likely need to be more responsive in the future if there's a call from our families to change what we're doing.
Thank you. That's all the questions I have.
All right, and next up is Talil with News 3.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. I apologize if this was something that was already touched on, but I had some bit of technical difficulties in the beginning. Could you touch on what the plans are for summer school at this point?
So we have not touched on summer school, so that's a good topic. Other than to say, as with potential reopening of school, we really are uncertain about a lot of things around summer school. There are some considerations, however, and I think, Kelly, I think you had the kind of like three choices. Maybe between you and Lisa, you can talk about what you're thinking or our thinking is now, even though we haven't really landed on anything yet.
Sure, Lisa, why don't you get started on the options and I'll jump in on the end.
Sure, that's a really good question. So our district, in consultation with the DPI and MSCR, is still actually proceeding and planning for summer school, despite our current virtual learning environment that we're in. As we know more about how COVID-19 will impact us, the format and the length of summer school will be adjusted as necessary. And we really appreciate the patience that people and families are having for us. We have actually extended our enrollment for students. The 4K through 7 deadline is May 1st, and the high school enrollment is ongoing. There are a couple of different formats that we're studying right now. The traditional summer school format that we've had that's face-to-face. We could have summer school in a virtual learning model. We could have no summer school. But we want to plan as if we are having it to provide options for families, and then we will let them know certainly what is the safest and best option for them to participate with us. Kelly?
Yeah, so as it does relate to our preparation for potential virtual learning this summer, I think it is important for everyone to realize that we are highly dependent on some legislation coming out of the state that allows for virtual learning minutes to count under the grades of 7. So we're waiting to hear from that from the DPI and from the state. In addition, we're waiting to hear from DPI regarding how summer school minutes might be counted in our overall financial structures. Our state formula and our revenues are largely dependent on how summer school is counted in the formulas. And we're looking for some flexibility from the state, and we're hoping that that'll come through in the next week or two as well.
Thank you.
Oh, that's all for me. That's all for me. Thank you.
All right, next up is Yanni. Is Yanni there?
Yeah. Wait, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I think that you guys kind of like talked about it a little bit, but just how just how like our grades would look on our transcripts, because right now I'm in 9th grade, so I'm not necessarily sure how this will impact me.
So Cindy or Lisa?
Sure, I'm happy to answer that. So as it goes on your transcripts, first and foremost, we are going to have a footnote that indicates that second semester of 2020 was COVID-19. So we want to make sure that that will exist for the next 4 years on your transcript. The second is every course that you are taking, that course will show up on your transcript, and it will show up either with a pass or a P or a no pass. In the event that as you go to life after high school and you are in need of letter grades due to a request from a third party that was mentioned earlier, whether scholarships, universities or colleges or other entities, we will then take that third party request and we will transcript your grades onto your transcript so that they are able to see that as well. So your grades and credits and the courses will show up along with a little footnote around COVID-19. This is very similar to most districts across the nation in how they're taking this into account, and it is already from most post-secondary institutions being recognized due to everything happening that this will be almost like a waived semester for students.
Okay.
I hope that answers your question, Yanni.
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
All right, are there any other questions? We're just going to open it up. I think we've made it through the list unless there were late comers. Is there any other questions? All right, I think that wraps it up.
Thank you all for coming today, and hopefully we can do this again. Gloria, any last words?
Nope. Thank you all.
Thank you.